Hi everyone, and today I am doing another video, and I thought that I could do something different. So, back in college, I took a Native American history course, and one of the areas that I explored and wrote about was the changing nature of how we see Native relations with when it comes to the fur trade. Mostly because depending on which decade and who is writing about it, we oftentimes see the fur trade in a negative light. And in a lot of ways, that is because we see this decimation of native populations through disease, war, epidemics, to the point that there is a point in Haudenosaunee's, aka Iroquois history, where the Beaver Wars that oftentimes is touted as like proof of their power because the land that they roamed and quote unquote, depending on how you see land ownership, they could claim also saw them make strikes into French Canada around the Montreal, Quebec area. But in reality, how them being able to claim furs or territory was more secondary, and what they were actually looking for was the ability to capture people because a lot of these beaver wars were actually called the Morning Wars, where in order to fill their decimated populations, a lot of raiding and capturing of human beings was needed. And in that aspect, the fur trade was absolutely devastating and, in a lot of ways, rewrote whole entire cultures and people's relationship to different groups and how what was once traditional raiding and competition became ever more competitive and saw mass migrations and in a lot of ways rewrote whole entire alliances. But then you have Richard White's middle ground, which looked at uh, different Algonquin groups, even some different Iroquois that weren't connected to the Haudenosaunee, aka the Iroquois Confederacy, and saw how oftentimes they were able to play different European groups off of each other, like the French and English, to serve as middlemen, smugglers, so that they could hold on to power and influence. And alongside that, depending on how you want to interpret this, even some groups could dictate what they would trade their furs for. Some actually wanted tech already made textiles like Strouds and stuff like that, and could dictate color, quality, all this stuff. But at the same time, the fur trade also saw decimation of animal populations, which heavily affected environmental history and in a lot of ways kind of doubled down this whole migration of different groups. But But when you consider all this, we do need to remember Native Americans did have agency and was were able to get move towards and further away from trading posts or even demand closer trading posts and be able to really control what they wanted their first for. So we need to remember that our understanding of the fur trade is still a active developing historiography that while now dominated by figures like Richard White who wrote The Middle Ground. And we also need to remember that these changing kinship ties also came in the form of marriage, where we see fur traders marrying native women and the force of and how this tied fur traders to certain tribes and or family groups and how this would affect sexuality, women's view of themselves towards religion, and traders' views towards their place in land, their role as middlemen between groups, and where the future of their children would be in. So, fur trading was important, but depending on how you see it, it oftentimes how it's viewed it tells a lot of people how they view Native American history, what aspects they're focusing on, and whether or not they're originalists, a revisionist, or post revisionist when looking at facts and methods. So, this is probably going to be one of my less conclusive videos and more of like an open discussion to see how we should view the fur trade and the development of that thought.